Hello everyone and welcome to my first of 3 videos on the Nikon D40X. Been a long time since I've done the video on a D40 variant. We're going to jump right in here and talk about what this camera is. The second video we're going to cover what everything on it does except for the menu button here, which we'll cover in its entirety in the third video. The Nikon D40X is an interchangeable lens digital SLR. What does that mean? Interchangeable lens means that at any time when you're not taking a photo, you can take a lens off the camera, put a different one on, and everything will be just fine. SLR means the light from the lens passes through it into the shutter area here, reflects off the mirror up to a pentaprism and the focusing screen right there that you can see, and you can see that image in the optical viewfinder on the back of the camera. It has an APS C 10.2 megapixel CCD sensor. All right, what does that mean? APS C is the size. Don't ever do what I'm doing right now. And you can see the shutter curtain back there is just a hair larger than the actual sensor. 10.2 megapixels is the image resolution. And CCD sensor means the digital sensor in this camera is a charge-coupled device, which at the time that this camera came out would have been a slightly better performing sensor versus an equivalent CMOS sensor. Since in the last, however long it's been since this came out, almost 2 decades, CMOS sensors have caught up and vastly excelled beyond what CCDs can do, and to the fact that CCDs, to the best of my knowledge, are not used in digital SLR or mirrorless cameras at all. They're pretty much just reserved for astrophotography cameras now. The shutter speeds on the Nikon D40X go from 30 seconds to 1/4000th, and there's also a bulb mode. The burst speed is 3 frames per second, and it has a 6-frame raw image buffer. The viewfinder on the back of the camera, right here, has 0.8x magnification with 95% frame coverage. Okay, what does that mean? 0.8x magnification means that the viewfinder is going to reduce the size of the image coming through the lens to 80% of what's going to be on the sensor. And 95% frame coverage, so that's a very small coverage, by the way. What that tells you is that this is really meant as an autofocus camera. Manual focus use with an optical viewfinder with an image that's that small is going to be very hard to do. So the 95% frame coverage, what that means is if you assume that what you are looking at right now is what's going to be on your sensor, then about 2.5% on each side and 2.5% on the top and bottom will be on your sensor, but not in the viewfinder. The ISO range on this camera is 100 to 3200 as well as auto. The flash sync speed is 1/200th, and it has no video capability. The D40X is a still image only camera. So basically, this D40X is exactly the same as the D40 with these 4 changes. The minimum ISO is 100 instead of 200. The sensor size is 10.2 megapixels instead of 6.1. The burst speed is 3 frames per second instead of 2.5, and the flash sync speed is 1/200th instead of 1/500th. So a few trade-offs there, and what we know, because this has a larger sensor and a faster burst speed, is that it also has a faster onboard computer than the D40. The target market for the Nikon D40X was the entry-level user, and it is a slight step up from the D40. And the 10 megapixel sensor versus the D40 6.1 would have been in 2007 when this came out, a very nice improvement versus the D40. This was made by Nikon in Thailand in 2007 only. And so now that we've gone over all of that, let's talk about what the things on the camera are so you can start getting to know how to use it. We'll begin here on the top of the camera, and these 2 bars are your strap bars. What these do is allow you to connect a strap to your camera. Okay, next up here on this, in the middle, we have the pop-up flash. Right here is the flash hot shoe. This is your mode index right here. This is your mode dial. We will cover this in detail in the second video and go over what all the different modes on this camera are. This is your sensor plane indicator. So if you're doing something like microscopy and need to calculate your magnification ratio from the sensor plane to your subject, then this is what you would measure from. Info button. Exposure value compensation button. This is your power dial index, power switch index, shutter release button. On the front of the camera, we have decorative red swoop. This is the infrared port for an infrared remote control. Autofocus assist and self-timer countdown light. Lens communication switch right here. lens mount, lens locking pin that locks the pin in place, or locks the lens in place when it's mounted, shutter or lens release button right here so that you can remove a lens, lens mounting index, nothing on this side of the lens mount. On this side of the lens mount here, we have your flash pop-up and flash exposure compensation button. This is your function button right here, and the badge for your camera. This side of the camera has a couple of ports underneath this door. I'm just going to lift it right up. The top port, as you can see from the symbol here, says video out, and then the bottom says USB. So on the top, we have a 2.5 millimeter jack for an analog TV connection. All right, that would be your yellow plug analog TV connection. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you don't have it on your TV. Honestly, I can't even tell you if TVs still come with analog connections or not. This is your USB connection. This is a 2007 camera that might be USB 2. I'm going to guess that's probably still USB 1 on an entry-level camera. At any rate, it's a mini USB port. It's not going to be super fast, just as a heads up. The purpose of this was to do data transfer so you could copy your files from your camera to your computer directly. Should not be able to charge this camera. I think it predates USB charging. Honestly, you're going to get faster transfer rates for your files if you simply take your SD card out, put it into an SD card reader in your computer, and transfer your files directly that way. This side of the camera has a couple of things. Here is a door that we're going to pop open and talk about in the second video when we go over SD cards rather. And then this little dude right here, when you use an AC adapter, can pop outward like that so that the cord on the AC adapter can be hanging out of the camera and the battery door chamber can be closed. The back of the camera has a number of controls: playback button, menu button, zoom out button so you can zoom out from zoomed in photos or zoom out to a grid view of photos, zoom in button, also combination green dot, and as well, this will also perform information button, be an information button here. LCD screen, viewfinder, diopter adjuster. The diopter on this camera goes from -1.7 to +0.5 rather. And to adjust it, what you're going to do is grab something like a pencil, put it in a binder clip so that the pencil doesn't move. Put the camera onto a tripod, manually focus through the viewfinder on the pencil tip. Then take a photo and compare the photo, what's in focus, with what was in the viewfinder. If the pencil tip is the same in your viewfinder as on the photo you took, you've correctly adjusted your diopter for your eyesight. Auto exposure lock, auto focus lock, rear command dial, control pad here, OK button, delete button, SD card access lamp. The bottom of the camera has a few things. This is battery chamber. We'll talk about this in the second video. Made in Thailand, Nikon, model, registration info, serial number, tripod socket. I do have some things not to do with your Nikon D40X. The first one is don't leave it without a lens on, okay? If you store it without a lens on or you have it sitting without a lens on, you're gonna get dust into the shutter area. That dust, once you put that lens on to start using the camera, is gonna have to go somewhere and it's not gonna escape. It's gonna end up on your sensor. You're gonna have a lot of dust cleaning to do. So if you don't have a lens on your camera, what you wanna get is what's called a body cap. I don't happen to have a Nikon body cap sitting here, but this one's for M42 to give you an idea. Basically, the Nikon body cap just clicks into the lens mount, you rotate it, and then you've now protected the inside of your camera from dust. Next thing is behind the lens, we saw the mirror, we saw the shutter curtain earlier, and behind that shutter curtain is the sensor. Don't touch any of those things. With the mirror, your finger oils can tarnish the mirror, which can affect your viewfinder brightness, your metering, and your autofocus. With the shutter leaves, if your finger oils get on those leaves, they can become sticky, and then they might not work properly, or worst case, the leaves are made up of a bunch of different leaves that sort of hide behind each other as they move upward. They're all in a different set of tracks. If you push one to the wrong track, those shutter curtains can intersect each other, and then they jam and break your shutter and ruin it. And then if you touch the sensor, your finger oils on the sensor, really, really hard to remove. Don't leave your camera or lenses in your car. They are always going to be a theft target, But extreme heat in a car, especially in a summer like we're having as I record this video, means that lubricating oils in the lenses can get onto the aperture. Any lubricating oils in the body can get into different places they shouldn't be, and then when they get back to the proper temperature and viscosity, they're where they shouldn't be and stuff won't move correctly. Also, extreme cold can cause those lubricating oils to break down and turn thick and gummy, which can cause them not to work properly. In addition, this camera does have plastic components throughout the lenses and body. Extreme heat and extreme cold can damage plastic, either cause it to crack or warp, and that's really going to be bad for your camera. Don't leave your camera gear in a plastic bag or box unless you have a good and rechargeable desiccant pack in with it, because plastic is moisture permeable. Moisture will get in here, settle on your optics, either in your pentamirror and viewfinder system or here in your lenses, cause fungus to grow, and that will affect your image quality. Don't let your Nikon D40X get wet. Electronics and water have a long history of not getting along. And lastly, your Nikon D40X is a precision tool that should be handled with care and respect. And as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So that's it for the first video. Here are a couple of cards that will take you to the second video, where we're going to talk about how to do everything except the menus, and the third video where we're going to go through the entire menu system and talk about how to do all the configuration. See you guys over there.